This is your top 10
live. Hello, everybody. And if I was Canadian, I'd apologize. Instead, I'm just going to say you're here by choice. So no apologies, no looking back. You're going to be listening to my top 10.
It's top 10. All right. Okay. I think we're going to need a fire hazard warning because I figure it'll be dry and themeless.
Oh, it's throwing the shade already, man. Yikes. Right.
It has nothing to do with the fact that I just took some OSHA training for my job. Oh, look, a fire symbol. This is kind of ironic. We might be talking about stuff like this later.
Yes, my list might be used as kindling.
No, I just said it was dry and themeless. I did say it's just a fire hazard.
It can't be worse.
Yeah.
So it can't be worse than the reflection I turned in after we analyzed the data of the state's standardized tests.
Oh.
I think in my summary I put something along the lines of this test is extremely poorly written. There were questions the teacher couldn't answer. But it makes for an interesting bunch. Graph reading, problem skills, as well as questions for a science trivia night at a bar. I will not use that. It does not make me a better teacher. Frankly, the years of the class I teach, the grades and projects they do for me is a better indicator than their science knowledge test.
Wow. Okay, it slowly came to my realization that Andy was actually reading that, and he had that prepared to give during my top 10. Like, that's heartwarming, Andy. What a sweetheart. So it's going to be better than that, or is it just your hopes, Andy? Because honestly, like I'm saying, dude, I'm saying go into this with no expectations because it sounds to me like. You're already holding me up to some sort of standard here, and that's we all know where that leads us all. So
any games on Joe's top 10 are at least better than standardized test data.
Well, thanks so much.
Wow, it's better. It is a potential fire hazard. We are starting well.
Yeah, a potential fire hazard and better than standardized testing. This is going to be a list to remember.
A
list you can't forget, maybe, no matter how hard you try. Oh boy. We got Trent back there who's still huffing and puffing maybe from his taekwondo.
No, I turned my mic off for a minute or two to take care of a child issue.
Well, I still think it's
because
yeah.
I still think it's because
Norm, we got Dean joining us in the comments. Yeah, boy, this is what an intro, man. I think I'm just gonna start recording from there. This is gonna post. A lot of times, what I'll do is I'll take like the outtakes and post them at the end of the episode. This time, I think we're just gonna go with this.
Let it roll.
We're just gonna roll with it. Welcome to The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, a podcast about board games. I'm your host, Joe Salin. I'm also, unfortunately, the subject of tonight's topic with my top 10 of all time, which has already been well introduced. You know what you're getting into here, so buckle down and keep your screams. Remember, the mic, the speaker you're listening to only goes one way. I can't hear your frustrated shouts. I'm being joined tonight by three guys who've been with me for a while here, and they're going to be kind of like the grief counselors for the podcasting community and everybody who accidentally or intentionally subjects themselves to this. So first off, we got Andy Dennison. Andy, how you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing fine. Everything's going well. By the way, if you in the chat have any frustrated shouts, just type it in and I will be the vocals for it.
That means everybody right now, type something you want Andy to say. Ooh, go with it, guys. Go. All right, well, that's Andy Dennison. He's our resident train gamer, heavy game extraordinaire. We have got also from the West Coast, TC Reed joining us tonight. TC, he could have been at Game Storm, the local convention going on in Portland, Oregon, and instead he is here with us, and that just means the world to me. Thank you very much for being here tonight to celebrate the top 10 that I'm about to unleash onto the world. TC, how you doing?
Doing great. I was hoping to actually be broadcasting live from GameStorm, but apparently their Wi-Fi isn't up to snuff, so I had to come home. So that was going to be my surprise tonight, but unfortunately, that is not the case. So, but yeah, I would not miss your top 10 for the world, Joe. I've been looking forward to this for quite a while.
remember, TC, expectations, man, expectations. Just totally discourage the expectations. It's heartwarming, but it's just really misplaced.
Mm. Really? Okay. Well, I can live with my disappointment.
It's you that has to live with it, not me. Oh, thanks, TC. I've also got Trent Ham, who's been here, Mr. Day One. Trent has just got done with all kinds of Taekwondo helmet shenanigans. How are you doing tonight, Trent?
Good, but tired.
Well, we'll keep this rolling. We'll keep throwing you over our shoulders here, so that way we can keep you awake and not have you going to sleep on us. I know you're pretty tired, so we'll go ahead and get this kicked off. We're going to start off with some reviews that may or may not have anything to do with the top 10 that's about to follow. Then, of course, I've already told you what's about to follow. So after the top 10, you'll be hearing some hypes. Let's go ahead and kick everything off with Andy giving us an update on a train game that he's certainly I feel like, Andy, we've heard about this game in several different instances, and you're going to give us a new update on what they're describing as the 18XX that's been designed off of every mistake anyone's ever made playing an 18XX.
Oh, no. Misconception.
Misconception. Okay,
Yeah.
not mistake, misconception.
Yeah. So I'll briefly go over 1862. I chose this one. I've talked about it before, but I've gotten another good play of it in. And I got to say, this game is really cool. I really, really like it. It falls into the, oh my God, how bad did they twist the system category of games I like. Because, yeah, this game basically does everything. It's like, oh, you want to own 100% of your company instead of 60%? Sure, buy it. Oh, you want to run like that? Yeah, sure, do that. Oh, you want to be able to sell off all your company? Yeah, okay, we can do that too. So anyway, I got to play it.
All the horrible ideas you could ever have. Sure, why not? You can do that.
Why not? Let's do that. But it also involves merging different kinds of companies. There's actually 3 kinds. There's local, there's express, there's freight. They all calculate revenue differently. There's a lot of variable setup. There's like 20 companies, but you only play with 16. You can merge them. You can do other things with them. They can go into receivership. It's an insane game. It just really is. The map is like half the size you would expect for an 18XX map. So within like one turn, you're immediately in each other's face, blocking out token. And that's the other one. I'm starting to really like games that let you buy your tokens up front. So you pay for your tokens the minute you start the company. So like there's no more cost to it. It's just like now I feel completely free in using them to block anybody and everybody out of my life.
You just have to make the bad move. You have no choice.
Well,
That wasn't the bad move, the mean move.
Well, in this map you have to, because literally there's like not much in the way of space between major cities that companies start at. Like you are in each other's face from the get-go. Yeah, some of the company, and there's 2 ways to float companies. You can do government funded companies where they start with all their money. You can do partial cap companies that you're starting yourself, and it's insane. The reason I kind of wanted to bring it up was because I'd had some more plays of it. It's high in my regards. It's definitely one of my favorite ones I've been playing. And also just to let people know that GMT is continuing to make 18XX games. They started out with 1846. 1862 is now on their P500 list. If you have some experience in 18XX, I highly recommend this game. It was really fun, really awesome. I really like it, especially if you like, just weird sort of abilities in side cases and oddities to your game. thing I might warn people a little bit about as well. 46 was very much, a beginner's game to get your feet wet in the system. 1862 is not. It's a very, very complex 18xx game. There's just so many different things happening and going on. But if that kind of thing doesn't intimidate you, it certainly doesn't intimidate me, because I'm insane. And if someone tells me, nah, you should start out lighter and work your way up, I'm like, no, man, I'm going in the deep end right now. I don't know how to swim. I'll make it. It's fine. But anyway, it's on GMT's P500. If it sounds intriguing, go check it out. It's definitely reasonably priced. I paid about 3 times what they're asking for my. It won't have as nice as stuff.
But that's part of the charm of it, Andy, right? It's charming that you own these games that look like, printed off of a primitive 1995 version of Microsoft Paint.
Well, no, and see the advantages. Now I have this, so when I see people with their GMT copies, I'll be like, I was cool.
Yeah, your hipster copy.
It did make the P500, and the P500 price is $55.
Yeah,
I
spent about $150 to have it shipped.
Wow, I think I can wait. But I definitely, I've got this one. I got this one on. It's incoming for me. I got it on the P500. I was real curious to hear what you say about it, because I will be getting it and trying it out. But it sounds like it's quite the game to check out.
It really is. It's very much more of a run good combo of companies game. It's not. There's not a whole lot of like shafting each other with the stock market. My God, the horrible blocking you can do on the map. Just use your tokens. Always use your tokens. And the other fun thing too with it, just as one final thought, is when you try to use a government company, auction. So you're going to lose eventually to do it, which is nice. So there's definitely a little more battles and fighting going over some of the really good starting ones, because not only are the companies in the game random, the type of company that so you might have the same company being a company and then a company. So it's a lot of looking at the positions and what's there, and then just immediately start, knifing each other with auctions, trying to get the best companies as possible. So anyway,
cool.
Check it out, P500. It's awesome.
1862. Trent, what is your experience either knowing about or playing 1862?
I played it once. It's and Andy described it pretty well. It feels to me like he described it as complicated. To me, it felt very open. Like you could just kind of do whatever you wanted. I mean, I don't know if I didn't feel it was complicated. I just felt more like there's just a lot of options rather than that being complicated.
It's complicated in that there's a lot more rules over, I think, than some. And while there is a lot of, there definitely is better ideas than others.
I think mostly there's so many rules because you can effectively just do whatever you want, kind of.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Like you need some rules that say like, okay, what happens when you do X? And so that's kind of how I felt about it anyway.
Yeah. Pro tip, it. Trying to run all freight companies, not a good planner. Not a good planner of the game. Lessons were learned.
Yeah. Well, that 1862, which now tell me, Andy, a lot of things you mentioned is modern, but this is like one of the newer games to come out from 18xx in the last few years, right? This is like, was it this last year release, 2017?
No. It's a little earlier than that, but it was on Kickstarter just slightly before I started getting into 18xx.
Oh, wow. So I'm way behind. It was like 2012 or 2013 then that would have been, right?
Yeah. So
okay.
It was one of those where, like, once again, I thought, oh, I should start with an easy one to see if I like. So I'll do 1889, 1846. And about the time I wanted to get into is when it, like, magically became impossible to find. So
yeah,
basically what happened is me in Europe was like, we found a few copies in the back of our warehouse. Because at that time, I also didn't know GMT was reprinting it. So I'm like,
Mm-hmm. Oh, of course, yeah, and you can't. It's tough to really predict what will and what won't. I mean, I just looking at what GMT has chosen to do, it's like 1846 kind of makes sense, but that kind of gave you the idea that, well, it gave me the idea that they were going to be trying to maybe do the classics, maybe do a reprint of 1830 or something, something where it'd be like do more classics and ones that would be more maybe in the accessible range. But clearly with 1862, that is not the case because, as you've said, approach this one kind of, as an experienced player, you'll probably get the most out of it. But a lot of what you said sounds really interesting. And anyway, I'm glad to hear that you're enjoying it. So cool, dude.
Move for them either economic, because this is one a lot have been waiting for. So I can see why they did it from a business perspective. Good move.
Sure. Cool. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on now to TC, who's here instead of being at GameStorm, but he's going to give us a couple of reviews. Well, I guess a review and an update about, you finally got a chance to play another game by a designer that just seems to be showing us, or a group of designers, a pair of designers that shows us just how many different hats they can wear, how many different sort of areas and nooks and crannies in the gaming hobby that they can cater towards.
Yeah, so on your recommendation, Joe, I managed to get a copy of Exit the Game, The Pharaoh's Tomb. There's a $15 purchase, not a big deal. So we finally broke it out, and me and my wife.
You can't rent this one.
Yeah. But once you use it, it's done. But we broke it out and we played it, and I was really I don't want to spill too much about it, but it is literally the only game I've played where you literally have to think inside the box. If you have experienced this, you will know exactly what I'm talking about, because there were some puzzles in there that were just like, what? Use what? What? No way. The ingenuity of using what comes in that box just to construct a exit room style game was pretty impressive. So, and then my daughter got on board, and we needed her because she has good eyesight, and you need it to look at these little bitty pictures, with the little bitty symbols. I'm like, oh my God, Kate, can you look at this? What's on this? I think that's a diamond or a plus. Can you look at that? Yeah, when you and your wife both have astigmatism and one of you has bifocals, you need a fresh pair of eyes to play this game. But yeah, I was just really impressed with the ingenuity that was in this thing. I can definitely say I can see why it won the 2017 Spiel des Jahres, because it's pretty inventive. It does some pretty neat stuff. My daughter was like, she wanted another one, and she specifically wants the Secret Lab. I think that's the next one she wants. They're really good. And, like you were saying before, I am just constantly impressed with this husband and wife design team of Inca and Marcus. I mean, they did Village, which was a really nice Euro that kind of turned worker placement up on its head, where you take cubes off the board to take an action. They did, they published a game through Ravensburger called Bugaloop, where they took a hex bug, a little toy hex bug, and designed a whole game around it, which was
Bugs in the Kitchen?
Yeah, that's called Bugaloop, I think.
Maybe that's a new one I've heard of this. Yeah. Same idea or same item in it anyway.
Yeah, so it's great to have a design group or a design couple that you really have no idea what's going to be coming out with these next. So high praise. I definitely would recommend Exit. I always make it a point to play all the Spiel des Jahres winners, and I think they won Spiel des Jahres with Village when that came out. I don't remember. I think they did. So yeah, check it out. And also, I just want to give a quick update on our Arkham Living card game campaign, the Path to Carcosa. This campaign is fantastic. We finished the Phantom of Truth, and we literally had to run for our lives away from the organist in Paris, which, if you can't quite figure out, is the Phantom of the Opera. we had to survive 3 nights with this thing chasing us all over Paris, and we had a ton of fun with this thing. The narrative is great, and Joe, though, I wanted to bring up the campaign story in particular, because the way it's structured. Have you been playing this one, Trent? Have you been playing Path to Carcosa?
Yes.
Yeah. Is it just me, or does this one seem really like it has an unreliable narrator where you don't know if what's happening is really happening or not. So,
Yes.
so you're like, yeah, go on.
It feels, I'm going to say this, I actually think this cycle's way better than the first one. This one feels like a Lovecraft story more than the first one did. This one is like, you're wondering what on earth is actually going on all the way through it. That's how I felt.
Have you finished it?
Yes.
Okay, because we were just like at one point, like this horrific thing happens. You're like, do you go back in? And we go back in, like everything's normal. We're like, what the heck just happened? You have to like check off, like you have to check off, like, and there's like this conviction and doubt, and depending on which one's higher determines the trajectory of this campaign. It's really neat, and yeah, this one has me on my toes. I don't know where this is going. I don't know how it's going to end up. I have been thoroughly enjoying this. It blows away the Dunwich one, the Return to whatever that one was called, the Return to Dunwich or whatever. Yeah,
no, the second cycle's way better than the first one. That's way better.
Yeah, and the story, and yeah, it's good stuff. And we're just playing it on easy with just messing around with decks, which is one of the things I really do enjoy about the particular living card game system, because you can just kind of mess around with the deck and not construct it particularly well, just what you think the character should be, and you can still have a ton of fun with it. So if you have not done this campaign, when experience a really good story, and so far this does not disappoint. It sounds like, Trent, that you've made it all the way through, and it just comes through with flying colors all the way to the end.
Yep.
Okay,
you got some weirdness coming, is all I gotta say.
Oh, I'm so excited. And I know that there's been some talk about us not talking about L5R lately. That's coming after Joe's top 10. So we will get to that.
Yes, stay tuned. All right. Thanks, TC. You know, both of those, interesting to hear your updates on how that's going. And I'm glad to hear that you're still enjoying, you know, a lot of times, like, those tend to sort of peter out, but it sounds to me like what they've done campaign structure wise is really keeping you engaged and wanting to see what direction they head. And I can understand that, because it's like, you know, remember back when it was a huge deal when like a video game actually had like some sort of save system where you could like, you know, like carry on from one game to the next. And like, yeah, it's just crazy to think that like, there used to be that time when you'd fire up a game, and every single time you'd fire it up, it would be like you were firing it up for the first time, that time, and every time.
Yeah. I remember the save battery in Legend of Zelda, where I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. We can save our progress.
Yeah, it's crazy when it remembers.
Put that on the game Rampage. I beat it. It took 7 hours of constantly smashing buildings, but I beat it.
You beat it. Yeah, and then also want to just interject the fact that my wife's a creative writer and she's still engaged with this, I think speaks pretty highly to the level of writing that's in this campaign. So hopefully when it's done, I'll bring Chris on and we can both discuss it together. But so far, so good. And thank you, Trent. I'm very excited. Hope maybe by the maybe we'll blow through it in GameStorm and I'll talk about it next Thursday.
Cool stuff. Right, well, I'm glad that you're also enjoying Exit, and good luck with the other ones there. You know, keep me posted, keep us all posted on which ones you guys are trying together. That Exit one though was the perfect home run. You know, with Carissa's interest in the Egyptian stuff, but you know, there's some other interesting stuff there. You might have gotten her hooked. You never know. Well, I'm going to go ahead and give my review quick here, so I don't have to do like my quick update and then go right into the top 10. So, so stay on the edge of your seat there, Trent. I'm just going to give a quick update, not a full review about the game Dominant Species. I have spoken about Dominant Species in the past, and I've got a couple of YouTube videos out there that you can see. I explained the game in a minute, and we actually used that this last weekend. We got a chance to play it, and we literally played my 1-minute video, and it's like, you know, it's a beautifully elegant game that I was able to get what's a 2 to 3 hour experience plus down into that minute, and really like I felt that as we were playing it consistently, you know, it feels to me like every little bit of this game is there for a reason, is extremely impactful. For those of you that have never played it before, it is about taking a species. I don't want to say a species, but taking a phylum of animals. I don't know, like you got your mammals, your reptiles, amphibians. Everybody has a special ability that's specific the type of animal that you are, and then everybody's going to take that and use cubes, which the game comes with all these cubes that are supposed to represent unique species that you're populating on the board, and it's essentially an area control game where you're fighting with other players for control and dominance. Dominance is when you are the best adapted to a region and lets you have these powerful abilities. Control for points tends to be is tied more to actual presence and whoever has the most cubes. So because of that sort of wrestling back and forth, you end up with some really interesting decisions to make in this sort of Kalis style. I place out my workers, and then after everybody's placed all their workers, you resolve them in a set order. We just had a really good time bouncing back and forth. We definitely did miss the fact that Trent was not able to make it. So I don't want you to think, Trent, that we played it because it's your favorite game, one of your favorite games.
Sure, I believe you.
But let's just say that that was, I suppose, like an alternate win condition for our group playing the game. So thank you very much for at least giving us the achievement, because we're achievement seekers.
I did hear that you guys were planning on playing Splendor until you heard I wasn't coming.
We're just trying to really passively aggressively tell Trent, like, hey, dude, here, you're going to come? Oh, well, we're just playing Splendor all night. So you just come, but just know that that's what we're doing. And then as soon as he's gone, it's like, hey, we ended up deciding to play Dominant Species. And, next time, it'll be Splendor next time, though. So you should come then.
Yeah.
You executed
by Splendor, you mean Age of Steam, right?
Yes. No, Andy, come on, man. What the?
All I want to know is who executed
Age
the
of
catastrophe.
Splendor.
The Age of Splendor. Oh, I don't know, man. I don't know if it would work. A really themeless, dry poke. You just got to add. Well, playing Age of Steam with poker chips is Age of Splendor, right? Because that's what people play it for.
That's basically it. I do want to add one thing to your review, Joe, but
sure.
Not about the game, but just the experience. Let me just say, there's like gamers together that are all fun, interactive games personally, and everyone playing as you should play it, taking the move that is best for time. Because that play of it that sung, man. That was awesome. Nobody took anything personally. Everyone did the best move they did. Like, everyone had a good. And you find that in a game group. Some people don't like that dancing games, and players like that you can play with, and you like those kind of games. That is just an awesome, awesome feeling.
Yeah, it is. When you've got a game that feels synced up with your group. So I mean, the only thing missing would have been Trent from the experience, and it would have been great to have him too, because I know that he would have just loved that one. It was I was the insects, and Andy's spiders ended up winning, and I felt like I worked so hard to be just everywhere and to get second everywhere, and I felt like, is this how the insects usually play? Because I just felt like anytime somebody started paying attention to me, I was just crunch, crunch, crunch.
Did you overextend yourself with the bugs and put all your cubes out on the map and go, oh, crap, I'm done?
It didn't happen until the last round. Okay. So I just kind of like, I had to sort of change my last round and what I did. I used more migration at the end there than I did the speciation, just because I didn't have any cubes left. But yeah, I ended up with I think I maybe had the most cubes get eaten of any player, but that was also because I was in the most places. And anytime somebody takes the competition action that eliminates other people's cubes, they want to use it most efficiently, even if they're not really doing it necessarily for the attack on that specific type. They're like, no, I can eat you, so I'm going to eat you. That's just how this works.
Well, that's an innate ability of spiders. You're going to get chomped by those guys. But were you the recipient of the volcano?
No, actually, I was not. I was not the one because I really couldn't like.
Did you take the volcano? Got blown off the awesome.
Well, Andy got hit with the volcano and still did okay. I couldn't really get hit by the volcano because I was everywhere. Like, anywhere I got hit, like the places I had the most cubes were all ones that were like the sort of home territory of the guy who got the volcano. So I mean, it was. Like, anytime something happened, I felt kind of like I'm fairly insulated to this.
Yeah.
Joe also didn't have any green cubes I put back in his plastic bag while he was playing host upstairs.
It was. I'm pretty sure they were all taken out fair and square, but I definitely got back and I was like, "Where did all my cubes go?" Like, What happened to me?
What happened?
So-
That was on the board somewhere.
I used to have cubes over there. Whoa, where'd they go? Sorry. That's the spider.
You happen to be the only player in many areas with spider.
Oh no. Yeah. So anyway, next time, Trent, we'll be getting you in there.
We have a question. Who was king of the glacier? Who kept getting glaciated?
That was an interesting thing. It was like the player that kept on taking it was taking it mainly defensively because they were like their main, like their C areas, the highest scoring areas were all like sort of on the edge of the glacier and in places where the glacier would score, 3 or 6 points by glaciating there. So that player kept on just kind of holding that spot hostage. And it was like any time that player would take an action to glaciate, it was kind of like in a suboptimal spot because it was more defensive, which was interesting. I mean, just the entire game was really characterized by interesting pushes and pulls by different players. It had a character to it of itself. Like it felt like it was more than just this is that player. It felt like this is that player playing the situation. And so that was what sort of what gave rise to that. I think that I share that belief with Andy. That's like this really did feel like it sung, and I look forward very much to playing it again. And I look forward to playing more other interactive games with a group that can really understand and play them to their highest potential. So very cool stuff with that game of Dominant Species. So let's go ahead now and hear from Trent, who has been playing the other Agricola.
Yes. All right, I'm going to talk about Agricola, Master of Britain. It's a game published a year or two ago by Hollandspiel, designed by Tom Russell. It's a completely solitary game, one player only. And it's a war game set in the period in which the Roman Empire was attempting to conquer Britain. And you're basically the Romans, and you're trying to figure out how to conquer Britain. And there's a bunch of tribes in the game that are wanting to keep you from doing so, just as historically accurate. In history, Romans conquered some of Britain, but didn't quite conquer all of it. Your goal on this is effectively to conquer all of it. So the way the game works, and this is a really interesting system on how it works, is you seed the board semi-randomly at the start of the game. The game basically consists of let's back up here a little bit. The game consists of 2 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, basically. They're like the weight of like construction paper, maybe. And a sheet of chits that has about 80 chits on it. And an 8-sided die. That's all you get in the box. That's it. All those her components. So you lay those 2 sheets out on the table, and you punch out the chits. The chits all represent either troops that are in the Roman legions, or members of different tribes that are already in Britain trying to resist you. So at the start of the game, you seed the board semi-randomly by putting chits on the various spots on the board. The board's like any other wargame map. It's split up into different regions, and there's movement lines saying where you can go around. You put the Romans on the southern end of Britain, and basically they are represented by 3 legions, and there's troops all over the board. And you take the rest of the chits that you didn't seed the board with, and you put them in one of 3 different cups. So at the start of the game, you have 4 cups out on the board. The 4th one isn't really important. What really the focus is these 3 cups. One of them is a friendly cup, one of them is a hostile cup, and one of them is an unfriendly cup. At the start of the game, you take all the ones that you didn't seed onto the board, and a few wind up in the friendly cup, a few wind up in the unfriendly cup, and a few wind up in the hostile cup. On your turn, you have 3 actions per round. And every action you take has some sort of like consequence based on based on the number of basically every action you can take in this game is mostly about moving chits either from moving chips from one cup to another, or out of the hostile cup onto the board. And you don't want more stuff to come out on the board because it's more stuff you have to deal with. So the choices you have in actions basically are all about moving those chits from cup to cup. And what's interesting is when you first seed the cups, you know what's in them. But after that, it's a blind draw. You don't necessarily know what chits are going from cup to cup. The really strongest units, the ones you're paranoid about, might start off in the unfriendly cup and wind up in the friendly cup. And they might go from the unfriendly cup and wind up in the hostile cup, or wherever they might go. The thing is, things only come out on the board from the hostile cup. And they only happen when you do things really aggressively on the board, like attack troops and stuff. So troops are moving around. You know generally what's going to be out there in the countryside, but you don't know specifically what's going to be out there in the countryside, and you don't know who you're going to tick off. So as you're playing the game, you have options there. You got to think about this. Am I going to be super aggressive and start killing people? That's going to tick off the natives, and I'm going to have some stuff that comes out of the hostile cup onto the board, and have stuff that was previously friendly to me become gradually less and less friendly. Or I can be nice and, negotiate and trade and do friendly things with everybody. That's going to take stuff out of the unfriendly cup, put them in the friendly cup. They're going to be far away from, they're not even going to think about attacking me. Then, at the end of the round, you count victory points, and every turn that goes by, you have a higher victory point threshold, and if you haven't got a total of victory points equal to that, you lose. Game's over. And the victory points come, how many troops do you have, how many garrisons have you built up, things like that. You score that and add that to your point total, and if you haven't scored enough, you lose. So the game continues through 8 rounds of this. There are progressively more and more victory points you have to stay alive. By the end of the 8th round, either you can only win if you've got to 75 victory points, which is hard, very hard, or if you also have to have the main bad guy, the guy that really controlled and got everybody to resist the Britons. If he's not on the board, that's also a requirement. So you have to have both of them to win the game. So what happens during this game is you're spending a lot of time moving chits from cup to cup, which sounds boring, you might think at first. The thing is, everything you do is going to impact how hard the rest of the game is for you. Every choice you make, if you take the slow route to winning, the thing that doesn't feel like it's going to go very fast, you make the future obstacles easier, which is great, but it doesn't feel like you're making any progress in the early rounds, and if you aren't making many victory points, you lose. On the other hand, if you go all aggro and start slashing people, you have no problem in the early rounds, but there's going to be so many dudes on the board later on that you're basically stuck. So the key thing is to kind of do both and wobble between them. And it really depends on the layout of the board, how you're going to do that. So in the end, what I will say about this game is the rulebook is really clear. It really explains the game really well. There's a ton of choices each round, way more than most solitaire games. It plays in about an hour. I would say once the first time you play, it's going to take you about 2 hours to really get the system. But after that, it's like boom, 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 boom. You can play this easily in an hour. And I would say if you're looking for something that's like a solitaire game that's easy to set up, has more meat on it than like Finished or something like that, or Friday. You want something that's heavier than that, but not anything that's going to like crush your brain. This is it. This is a game you're going to want to play. It feels kind of almost like a Euro a little bit. Yeah. Not many components. It's really impressive how good the system is.
I've heard a lot of good things, that this is one of the kind of big Hollenspiels to get your hands on.
Yes. It's really impressive how good this is. I have beaten it. I have probably played it 9 or 10 times, I'm guessing. I have managed to win once, and I don't really know how I did it. I realized about round 5 out of 8, the things were going really well. But I don't really know what I was putting together to make things go so well. Like, the next time I played, I lost again. And I thought I was duplicating what I did before, but I must not have been. So it's a tough nugget to crack. It feels like the things that worked fairly well last time don't always work as well the next time, which means that the puzzle's deeper than I initially thought, which makes me keep wanting to come back to it. It plays in about an hour. It's easy to set up. You can set it up in like a minute and take it down in about a minute. You do need 4 little plastic cups or 4 bags or something that you can't see in. But other than that, I mean, everything's in the box. It's a very nice little game.
Yeah, I've played a game by this designer. I was looking it up, The Supply Lines of the American Revolution, and I rather enjoyed that as a 2-player game. But it sounds like I need to check this one out too.
It's a really good, about an hour-long solo game. Yeah, I highly recommend it. And like, if you're not wanting to play something as heavy as like a coin game solo or Mage Knight solo, you want something that's like easy to set up, but you're looking for something a little bit heavier than a lot of the other really quick solo games, this is it. Just get this.
This would be like up your route, maybe, Joe, then.
That's what I'm wondering. Like, I listen to that because I'm getting more and more into this. Like,
it's only $30.
Well,
yeah, it's not
like I
bad
said,
for their games.
There's 2 8.5 by 11 sheets in the box and a sheet of 88 counters and an 8-sided die. And don't worry about the die rolling. The die rolling is actually really minor in this. It basically has to do with how strong their defense is.
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly what the die does. And honestly,
it really sounds just really intriguing to me. I'm getting more and more into the Friday app, and it's just like the amount of the way that uses deck building to evoke a theme is incredible. What you're mentioning this though is like, I mean, just like my positive current like explorations of Friday. When you mentioned that, I was like, holy crap! I never thought you would have brought up that game when talking about a game by Hollandspiel. But yeah, I definitely want to give this one a try and see. Maybe this is like that sort of like maybe I can push myself into this place from the simpler solo games that I need just for my own ADD, because I have a hard time keeping that focus through the procedural ones like you mentioned, like a coin game, one where you'd have to play solo and run a whole lot of other things. It does sound like one that has a system that's all fairly concise and pretty much it all interacts with this one real system, right? The sort of like the way that the cups move around, and it sounds like what happens on the board is largely being sort of resolved by what's in these cups, and really it's about the uncertainty starts to rise, and that sounds to me like an interesting thing, especially with the amount of depth that you've mentioned in your review as part of why you enjoy it so much.
Yeah, it's a middle ground between something like Friday and something like Comancheria.
Hey, Andy, if you go to the Hollandspiel site, you can get a print and play version for only $12. I think this might be right up your alley.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not bad. Yeah, I don't have this one. I have quite a few of their games, but this one I don't.
I highly recommend it. If that sounds appealing to you at all, after you played it a time or two, it plays in about an hour, maybe a hair more. It's easy to figure out. I completely got it about halfway through the first game, but the first game takes a while because it's like, where do all these chits go? What is happening? But after that, it's smooth as butter.
I know Travis from Low Player Count really likes this one too. He really recommends it.
Yep. Get it.
Get it. All right. Trent's review of Agricola, Master of Britain in 2 words. Get it.
Yeah.
And this closes our reviews. Now moving on to my top 10 games. So I'm going to guess about maybe 30 to 45 minutes. If you want to come back at the end of that, you'll get the hype section.
It's 30 to 45 minutes because we didn't allow Joe to have honorable mentions.
Oh, Andy, this is the one time I followed the rules. I feel like I'm getting more crap for my prior behaviors than I am like this time. No, I've got 10 games, straight up 10 games. And the only prefacing I have is first of all, let's see, what did Andy want? So I had to come up with these. I didn't have these, but since Andy asked, I have some honorable mentions, some that almost made it, and also my biggest disappointment.
Yay! My favorite.
No, I don't have any of those things. I never. No, I just wanted to, Andy, I wanted to challenge Andy because as any good student in any classroom would do, as soon as somebody threatens you, you make sure they mean it. You say, do it. Prove
your disappointment, though. What's your biggest disappointment? I'm sad.
Oh, no, I don't. I mean, when it comes to my biggest disappointment game of all time, whew, that's a tough call, dude. That's a tough call. And I think here's why. Because when I made this top 10, I don't know what inspires me most in gaming. I feel like some of it maybe is a takeaway, and I've heard other guys on the podcast mention this. I've heard other individuals talk about this, that when you leave a game, how much does that game stay with you? How much does the next day, does it keep you thinking? How much are you continually puzzling? And I use the word puzzling, so I'm already just saying, hey, I'm a super Euro guy, whatever. But how much does it have me sort of in awe with my jaw dropped at the accomplishment that I see it being from a design standpoint, and just in terms of what I see the designers putting together and giving me to work with, usually building upon a system that has a solid foundation and then embellishing it with what seems to be infinite amounts of different angles you can approach the game from, with infinite amounts of permutations. And I mean, I'm not just talking like variability and replay. I mean, like, just like the type of game where a single, butterfly in this side of the game is going to change, that the entire course of every decision that's come from that point forward. And especially when a game system expects you to be competent at certain things and expects you to meet certain, I would say, a game system that's willing to sort of slap you for not doing what you should be doing. I mean, a certain amount, a healthy amount of where you can take risks, like a game system that has punishment and it allows you to take risk and get rewarded by that, but also maybe leaves you vulnerable. And I feel like that sort of interaction where like you're taking these calculated risks, but your opponents then are it's at their best interest to sort of like capitalize on those. That's the type of player interaction that tends to be what most drives what I'm looking for. So, your sort of direct attacking games, I can totally take and enjoy those, but they're not going to be what I put in my top 10. They're just not going to be the ones that are super close to my heart. The ones that just when you mention this game to me, you better be in for the long haul, because I could talk about these forever. I'm keeping these ones specifically short. Like I'm definitely not going to do that. But like the amount of inspiration I draw from these games is the reason that they're on this top 10 list. And that's why these are at the top and not, the rest of however many top games I would do. So I guess that's my preface. It's not so much about like, do I have this specific experience that sits in my memory? It's more just like the game itself feels to me like it just has it all and knows how to use it. So anybody want to comment on how empty that was? How it's just like, hey, Joe, welcome to every top 10 list of all time. You think you put great games on here. Shut up and say your games.
Shut up and say your games.
Wait, did we start the list yet? I wasn't listening.
I thought we were done.
No, Andy, that was the best time for you to have been like, are we done yet? I wasn't listening. Is the list over? Well, I just need, I need somebody, and I've got somebody in mind, but anybody would do, but really there's somebody who I'd like to, to get me kicked off here with a good old number introduction.
Number 10.
Thank you. Oh man, it just felt great.
That's slick. That's nice.
It was smooth. It was like a bourbon. Like I think it was a barrel aged number 10. So my number 10 here, I feel like it's just always going to be that sort of like it firmly fits in a number 10 spot. I feel like it's always on my top 10. I feel like I don't want to move it above anything else, but it's just there. It's like, this game's like in my top 10. And that's because it's just consistently offering me a new dimension with expansion upon expansion upon expansion that somehow have found the most seamless way to integrate expansions into a base game system that's super, super slick, easy to teach, but also has the immense depth that almost single-handedly eliminates the entire genre of deck building games from really like having a reason to exist. And this game, of course, that I'm talking about is the quintessential deck builder, the one that really popularized it all, Dominion. So a little overlap here with TC's list. Dominion is my number 10.
I rated it higher than you? Well, that's unusual. Okay.
That's right. So I did get Andy to play it. So at this point, it's, it switched from I'm going to play this after I play Dominion to I'm going to play this after the High Frontier campaign World in Flames edition.
No, the High Frontier with all modules.
Good Lord.
Well, we got Andy to play Dominion, so that was a big win in this last year. And, I got my organization all together, and so I can actually really enjoy this game in person like I had been online all the time. Got it to the point where I can actually like table it. I can carry everything. It's heavy. I can't believe that the hardware I got from the box, this is like my Christmas present. The box is that one that they sell at Meeple Source, I think. I forget which one. I think it's Meeple Source. But they have like a Dominion box that has handles, and I'm like, man, it needs to be like heavier duty. But I think is it not Meeple Realty? Meeple Realty. Okay. I'm pretty sure it's not that one. I'm pretty sure No, it might be Broken Token. Broken Token.
Oh,
Whoever
that would
does a
make more
Dominion box has been doing one for a while. So, but I'm happy to have it all organized. It's just such a fantastic system that I'm always wanting to. I mean, every single game you're going to set out 10 cards. It's just like, and it's one of those that you can take to that next level of play. Like there is definitely that next level of play where people are going to be getting through their entire deck, and it's not so much even about that, but they're going to be finding systems to efficiently build their engine and then just churn out points and points and points. And you're going to just, when you see this game being played well, you realize that yes, it's like chess, but it's huge amounts of variability that want me to keep playing. And the expansions that have really plumbed the depths of themes, different themes, and different mechanics in tandem. I think that the strongest expansions are Dark Ages of the original 9, and then Adventures and Empires. I really love both of those expansions, and I have a hard time comparing them to the original expansions because they did kind of expand the system and make it wider for the first time. So, understand that you're getting into a little bit more there. But those three right there are just three excellent expansions. Other ones, that are fun to add, like Prosperity is sort of like your, that might be your, everybody's my first expansion to Dominion. But aside from that, the other ones are all excellent except Alchemy, which still has interesting stuff. But anyway, Dominion, it's excellent. You do need expansions though for it to really get onto this list. If I was only playing base Dominion, it would not be something. But it's also it's a system that's built to expand. So I think it belongs on here, even if you consider that a foul. So that was my number 10, Dominion.
I will never turn down a game of Dominion. I love that thing. It's great. There we go.
Better than standardized test score.
Better than standardized test scores. Thanks, Andy.
Are we
it's
ready?
Better than Agricola with the fairy deck.
And yeah, okay, yeah. Well, hold on, maybe it's higher on the list. Who knows? Sorry, Andy. Sorry, Trent. I know you tried. Please.
Number 9.
Age of Steam. Age of Steam is crazy to think that it's 16 years old, and you've got a system that entertained and still does. There's a reason there's hundreds of there's over 100 expansion maps. I mean, you're talking about a game that by today's standards, by the way that the market, the gaming has shifted to be, like including a much larger swath of individuals, I feel like Age of Steam being out, if it gets played by somebody who's never played other games, they might be like, this is dry, look at the map. It's like, I feel like Age of Steam is sort of like that first step into 18xx because, you play that on the base map and it's like, wow, this map is like green. It's, it's really Spartan. The pieces themselves, especially if you play with somebody who is like an Age of Steam aficionado, they almost always want to play with the discs. They don't want to play with the actual little plastic trains. I understand why, functionality, function over form. I get it. But Age of Steam is one of those where it's a beautiful, elegant system that has just immense, constant, different explorations of how that system can work. And not only that, but it puts players in a situation where they are wrestling as much with other players as they are with the game system. And you feel, even though you didn't maybe get the best score, just getting through a game of this without going bankrupt, and even a bankruptcy can feel in many ways like, man, I can't believe I lasted that long. It really is one of those that it gives you a difficult puzzle to solve on your own, but one that other players are going to be constantly being taken into consideration as variables in it. One that I really, really love, the closest, like an amazing, what I consider, an economic game, Age of Steam.
So good.
Yeah, it was my number 1, so yeah. Obviously, I agree.
It could have easily been higher. So TC, I haven't heard anything.
No, it's a good Martin Wallace game. Yeah. Go on. I plead the fifth. I do not want to incriminate myself. But I have enjoyed my games. I will say this for Age of Steam, it was probably the most stressful game I've ever played. I felt
maybe that's what I love about it, man. The stress.
I felt
Tension.
it was a minor victory in and of itself just to get out of debt and get my loans paid off.
Yeah.
That was just like, I won. No, you didn't. I don't care. My loans are paid off.
That shadow, like
if you were in the
shadow of
positives
death.
in your first game of Age of Steam, you've won your first game of Age of Steam.
When you make that first dollar, it's like, holy crap! I don't have to start thinking about share. Well, I do still have to think about shares. You still do, but like, it's like I actually have money. What? I don't have to just. It's just crazy. It's so incredible and really stress. I think TC though. I am a huge fan of like just anything that gets me engaged, and tension I think is that sort of maybe an identifying connecting thread between the things on this list. You know, every game has in some way a tension that a central driving force. It's like, you know, you are wrestling with the system, and in Dominion it's like, this feels like it should be easy. There's just 10 new cards, but it's how much it does with that. In Age of Steam, it's that sort of economic. You're taking loans at the start, and you eventually get to the point where you're solvent, but you still might need money, so you might need to finance. And every single time you take a loan, it's less points ultimately in the end game. More of an investment you're going to be losing. You know, it's going to bleed your finance as the game goes on. So it's a tough decision, but it's one that the game forces you to do. I love that right there. That tough decision that you're forced into that you know you need to do. And that's why I love Age of Steam.
The game, quick plug, the map I want to play is Taiwan Cube Factory. Oh my god.
I want to try that one, man. I'd say that of the expansion maps to Age of Steam, there's just very few that I haven't felt like, oh, for sure. Like, because it's weird to think that one of my best experiences with it was like playing a map that was set in New Hampshire. Like that was it. But it was awesome. It was like a blast.
Well, Taiwan Cube Factory, there's no production. You don't add cubes. You have to like deliver cubes and then combine colors to make new cubes.
It's like everything is like sort of a puzzle that then gets like carried on to this next spot. So it's like you're trying to figure out how to deliver not only to make the most money, but then also to make yourself have an end game.
Yeah, I basically read somewhere that if you don't go up, you've won your first game of Taiwan Cube Factory.
All right, well, that was my number 9, Age of Steam.
Number 8.
Oh boy! All right, that was the sigh. That was me bracing myself because I'm ready to take it. My number 8 is the cooperative game that first. I first played it, and it just blew my mind. Andy taught it to me. I was so frustrated. I was angry. I had such a hard time playing it. We blew up. We died. And I am talking about Space Alert. It is a timed cooperative game in which you are going to be coordinating what you're doing with other players, and ultimately it is the time limit that forces you to work together because you know the game mechanics are simple, but what's tough is figuring out how to coordinate the systems of the ship with simple button presses, but you're doing that while the backdrop of the theme here is like all of the different, it's all paying homage to every movie set in outer space, from Alien to like time traveling to phasing in and out, tons of Star Trek references, some Star Wars here and there. I mean, asteroids coming at you. It's just, to me, it has so many things that I really appreciate. I feel like I played this originally on the app. I think that it's one of those games where it shows you how an app can really enhance a game system and not necessarily replace what the game already comes with. The game comes with a disc because you have to listen to like 10 minutes of a track that tells you when you can not talk and when you can play your cards for a certain phase. But it requires a level of communication that definitely makes it one of the most frustrating games to learn. And I am yet to really see somebody who did not really understand what they were getting into enjoy a first game of Space Alert.
Age of Steam, yeah.
Either way, really. I mean,
I hated my first game of Space Alert, but the thing is, like, when it comes down to it, it is something truly different than any other thing that's offered, and it is the sort of cooperative game that, with that time limit is able to pack everything in. And it is a shot of adrenaline, Pulp Fiction style, straight to the heart. So that's why I really love Space Alert.
Well, you haven't steered me wrong with a who's the designer on this? I can't think of Lada Shibata. So yeah, I mean, I've got Dungeon Pits, I got Dungeon Lords. Heck, I'll give this one a shot. I was
you have to get the expansion because the expansion has just. I don't know. I always feel like at some point I have to hide under the table. Like rocking myself back and forth, going, "Game over, man! Game over."
Nice. All right. Well, yeah. That was my number 8.
And now you're ready for
go
7.
Oh, okay. Nothing, Trent. You don't want to. I mean, come on, man. I can turn off. I can take off my headphones if you'd rather.
No, I'm good with that. I just don't have much to say on the subject.
All right, man. That was my number 8.
Refer to the episode like overhyped or whatever. Basically, the episode where we weren't entirely sure Joe wasn't going to murder people.
Yeah. It was one of those where it was like, let's put it like this. I've learned that, people are entitled to their opinions, and that's I guess, I was still learning that, so I appreciate everybody's patience with me. I've grown a lot as a human being in my experience on The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. So anyway, some of that has to do with people being patient with me. I appreciate that. So that was
we had an intervention. It was fine.
That's my number 8. Space Alert.
Number 7.
I didn't realize this, but apparently I put 2 Vladas in a row. Number 7 is Mage Knight. The huge. It's fueled by deck building at its core, but really everything that you're doing here is preparing, like sort of bolstering yourself, which is represented by a deck of cards, and all of your special abilities, your ability to cast spells. I mean, it's just everything you can imagine of being just an awesome mage knight. I mean, sort of fantasy warrior, where you're going to recruit units and be able to send them to battle for you. You're going to be fighting enemies that may or may not even be hostile towards you, and so you're managing your reputation, which affects your ability to recruit units. You're also trying to manage like your mana and how to best not only round to round use that. I mean, just all these different wheels within wheels, but it's not just wheels. It's wheels within wheels seems to assume that everything is a wheel and everything then mimics the form of another system. But no, it's all these different systems that are all so unique. And it ultimately leads you to this massive buildup where you have tailored a deck by only adding about as many cards as you start with, maybe less, maybe more. Usually you start with about 16 cards, and you'll end with usually not more than 30. I would say it's kind of rare that you get more than 30. Maybe if you're playing like the wound person and you pack your deck full of wounds. But I mean, you're also having to manage like how do you deal with wounds in a deck. There's really special, like the game is in many ways harsh. It's a harsh environment, not only for a player, but also for a learner. So your first games of this, the rule book itself, it's all a very difficult process, but I promise you it's very rewarding. One that it's just like so go-to. It's like you can make an epic game night out of a 2-player affair with a game like Mage Knight. And then I'm sure that there's all kinds of epic 2-player conflict war games you could also choose to play. Mage Knight offers something totally different than that, and something that it would be more in tune to what I respond to. And that is just this amazing, huge, it arguably is more of a logistics puzzle than a true, dungeon fighter, true sandbox game. But that's what also gives it that sort of baseline, solid structure that is necessary for a game to really build upon. So that's what I say about my number 7, Mage Knight. What do you guys think?
Thanks for finally picking a good Vlada game.
I really like the Star Trek version, the Star Trek Frontiers. I just recently got the expansion for it, the Return of Khan, and yeah, I like it. The fact that it just added a theme, I added a theme to it that wasn't generic fantasy. I enjoyed it. I like running around in the Defiant with Cisco and Worf and my crew and blowing up Dominion ships.
Yeah. Star Trek Frontiers and Mage Knight are basically the same game. They're so close.
I haven't played Star Trek Frontiers. I want to so bad.
Have you played Mage Knight? Star Trek Frontiers.
Well, I own Star Trek Frontiers. I have it's a shelf of shame game for me, and it's so weird because I know that I'll like it. It's one of those. It's like, hey Andy, you want to come over and play and help me play Mage Knight because it's so complex and so tough. Like a lot of people really like soloing it, and I totally see why. But man, I get so, I don't know. I guess I have a hang up where if I get like deep into a solo game and realize that in an earlier round I forgot to do something that would have either helped or hurt me, I just feel like I want to go back there. And there's no way, like there's so frequent in board games where there's just no way of going back. So that's sort of like that need for an undo button in tabletop solo experiences is something that I still like am hurting for. Like that, I was talking about, I'm playing the Friday app a lot, and it lacks an undo button when you do things that don't have random stuff. And it just, you end up like there's a transition between phases, and it's like an image that pops up on the screen and it fades out without you touching it. But if you touch, it has stuff behind it that's already having you play the next round, but you can't read it. So it's like you end up accidentally choosing something because you can't see it. And it's like, that's so frustrating. I feel like that's the way I feel with Mage Knight or any heavy solo game. Whenever I play on my own, I feel like I'm just doomed to make those same mistakes. to feel like 2 rounds in, I'm like, well, crap, I forgot to do that. Man, this is just, this is why I'm losing, or this is why I'm winning. Either one. It's like I just take those. I maybe it's like that perfectionist OCD sort of thing, but I don't generally suffer from OCD. It's just something where it taints the experience, and that's why I love playing this with 2 players, cooperative. It's just so fantastic. I can't imagine wanting to fight each other in this because I feel like I want to be able to help you puzzle out your best turn, and that just is at odds with the competitive game. So, like occasionally it's, you just need help from another player. And most of the time it's me asking Andy, like, hey, Andy, I've stared at this hand for like the last 5 minutes. You deserve better than this. Can you help me?
Yeah. Well, and the things I can add to Mage Knight are, one, I think unless you have a personality like mine, this is a game better taught to you than trying to learn it from the rule book.
Precisely. Ricky Royal has an excellent video. He taught me how to play Mage Knight, and even with all of his help, I still had decided like it's just too much for me. And then it was actually Andy who got me back into it, and I have it all, and I'm never getting rid of it. It's just like one of those perennial. Every time I see it on the shelf, the enjoyment I get just from noticing it and remembering it that I've got that in my life is worth owning it, even if it's tough to get it tabled all too frequently.
Well, and they're coming out with, I thought I'd read somewhere, a big box.
Yeah, the ultimate. They're packing everything in the
like 130.
And Shades of Tesla will actually finally match everything else.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, God.
I think it just come out with an upgrade pack just for the Shades of Tesla stuff.
Well, no. The sad part was I found out they did because I looked it up when I heard about it. But yeah, you apparently had to let them know like within a month of Shades of Tesla coming out, or they wouldn't replace your chits.
I should turn off my mic before I scream, probably.
No, here's how you do it. Here's how you do it, Joe. You go, that's pretty chitty.
But yeah, Mage Knight, here's the thing. If you like to have to find the most efficient way of doing an action when there's 10 ways you can do it, you'll like Mage Knight.
Yes, precisely. and then all the other stuff is Chrome, but it's Chrome that does enhance the experience in every way. It does not, like, the theme never retracts here, never detracts from the experience. It's all well considered and integrated into this beautiful monstrosity.
For my money too, it doesn't really shine super well till you add Lost Legion in.
Yeah,
I almost consider that necessary.
And I want to point out something that literally Return to Khan is Lost Legion for Star Trek Frontiers. It's literally what it is.
But you get the
Khan is good. Yeah, and Khan is good.
Yeah. You mean Volcon?
Volcon.
Yep. Oh,
yeah, Khan's flying around a Dominion ship, and you got Captain Kirk in the Enterprise A. Yeah, it's good. I always like beaming down to planets and using Ducat as a meat shield every time I'm about to get nuked. That was always a lot of fun. But yeah, I like it. And I do think Frontiers is a little bit easier than Mage Knight. It's a little bit more forgiving because I have gone back and played Mage Knight.
I've heard that, yeah.
I went back and played Mage Knight. I'm like, oh, I'm just dead.
Because there tends to be the systems aren't as compartmentalized, maybe is the way of putting it. Like in Star Trek Frontiers, you definitely have like more uses of the diplomacy resource, whereas if you're not running a heavy unit acquiring deck, then your diplomacy might be cards that just kind of always get played sideways.
And you have shields.
Yes,
shields is big.
Yeah, and that definitely cushions you from always taking these wounds that will stay with you until you have a specific healing ability, which you're like, crap, I played that card sideways 2 turns ago. I'm screwed. My unit is just going to sit there. I can't do anything the rest of the round. Yeah, anyway, but then it feels like I did this. I did this to myself.
Yeah, I made the risk you want. You choose the risk you want in the game. Like everything is you got a good idea what could happen going into it. The thing I like about the game is it's a set number of rounds. So if you try to play it super safe, you're going to lose. You have to take risks, but you have to decide when those risks are worth it.
Mm-hmm. For sure. All right, well, that was my number 7, Mage Knight.
Number 6.
Iberian Rails. Yeah, I mean, like this game to me is an epic. I don't want to say epic. It's not epic. Whatever epic. Screw epic. I don't want to use the word. Sorry. Just go back from that. So we're gonna start over here. Iberian Rails. This is definitely the game.
No, I actually really like it.
Well, what it is like somewhere in between where you're sort of winsome flavor of train games. Think Chicago Express, and other like cube rail games. And it's where that like world meets together with like character selection but every bit of it is there's no input or output randomness. Like even the beginning of the game, it's all out there for you to see. There's nothing that gets revealed in between rounds. I mean, you've got extremely impactful abilities, but ways to mitigate the effects that other players can have on you, and healthy dose of interaction. Though I know that for many it can turn them off. So this is one of those kind of like Dominant Species where when you get the right group, it's one that can just really sing because it is that sort of heavily interactive experience. You can end up swallowing up other people's companies, running them totally into the ground, and it really is just an incredible exploration of all sorts of different aspects of a like all the different roles that you would take to try to bolster the several different companies that you are using as like a railroad baron. And it has the differentiation between companies, sort of like where they're at on the map and how many shares they have, really help characterize it, and also their order, because they always act in a specific order. It's not the players taking actions per se; it is the companies acting. So in that way, it shares a lot in common with Imperial by Matt Gertz, which is like you've got the countries that are acting, and I know that was a heavy influence on the game. So I think that adding that sort of puzzle to solve in terms of the order that the specific roles you'll be choosing at the start of every round, together with a little stack of roles you're not going to use in the game, makes me feel like the possibilities are fairly well endless, but they are still extremely tight, interesting designs that I'm always looking to go back and revisit. It's just an absolutely beautiful little game that has really underrated, in my opinion, artwork. I mean, the production itself has some positives, and I really do like the little train cubies. Instead of cubes, they have little train wooden pieces, which are really nice. Those would be pretty cool to have in Age of Steam. Like a little wooden train piece that was small enough to actually fit, I don't think anybody would have gotten up in arms about giant plastic trains that kind of don't fit on the tile always. But they're not that big of a deal. I'm really making too big of a deal for that anyway.
Hey,
but I do like, yeah. And this game has like a cardboard money that's extremely easy to pick up. It's strange. It's like, I don't know. It's like the highest quality cardboard money I've ever seen doesn't seem like it is, but in practice, it's like, these are like the type of chips that just you easily pick up and move, and they have a light weight, so easy to maneuver. I mean, there's some really nice things about the components and stuff, but really when it comes down to it, Iberian Rails keeps me coming back because it gives me that sort of economic experience, but it does so in an extremely in a intuitive system that makes sense, that plays in a very like intuitive way, but gives me all kinds of different choices and makes me in charge of a company, unlike other Cube Rail games, and then sees how much mileage it can get out of that together, coupled with a character selection system that I just absolutely adore. So that's my number 6. You won't find that probably on anybody else's top 10 list out there, Iberian Rails.
And I think that the thing about Iberian Rails that's good is those characters, selection, and powers. It makes the game much more approachable, because I think the other Cube Rails games fall into that much more dry train game category. Like someone like me will enjoy it, but Iberian Rails kind of makes that system much more accessible to a lot wider of an audience.
It's like a nice frosting, sort of,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
Joe, I'm going to be real here for a second. I absolutely had no interest in this game whatsoever. You were talking about, I was like, blah, 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 blah. And then you brought the designer on, and he said his favorite game was Rex. I just immediately jumped to the top of games I must play before I die. So I think I am very excited to actually get this one. It does seem a little hard to get right now, but I would love to get my hands on this one and play it. And, I can be shallow. It's because the guy who designed it said Rex was his favorite game. So that sounds cool.
TC, you'll like it the first time the marketing return is used.
Okay.
And someone's planning on scoring their yellow company 3 times and has it taken away from them.
And it's gone.
It is just gone.
Oh boy, Trent, any comments on Iberian Rails?
I like it, but it felt very close to Age of Steam for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see that.
Similar. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a bad thing. Just to point that
out.
No. Okay. My number 6, Iberian Rails.
Number 5.
My number 5 is also a cooperative game, which I mean, geez, like I've already put on 1 cooperative game and 1 game that I prefer to play cooperative. And now we have a game that pushed me to, just like it's pushing cooperative games into a new level of depth while still also keeping the cooperation aspect. Like other games have consistently, cooperative games, sought to sort of zap this alpha gamer problem by which one player makes the decision for everybody else. And I think that to varying success, it has to do with like limiting the information that players are able to share, or by giving a time limit. But here in Spirit Island, it just is like, you require so much management and so much is done simultaneous that like there's just no way you can really alpha game another player. I mean, you are so busy and it takes you so long that if another player is really taking that long, then they're probably still just learning the game, needing help from you as a teacher. But you're giving them a good amount of time while you take care of your own complex inner workings and decisions before you end up helping them out. Now, the game I'm talking about is the anti-Settlers of Catan, the cooperative settler destruction game, Spirit Island. Probably would be my vote for anything on this list that has like the most absolutely beautifully executed theme, beautifully executed artwork. It's just so phenomenal how these spirits that have names like Earth's, gosh, oh my goodness, it's been Bringer of Dreams and Nightmare. Yeah, river flows like, or river surges in sunlight. That's one of them, and then like the Thunderbringer. I mean, these are all just like every one of these things has just, something that keeps me like it almost feels like it belongs inside a mythology of, I don't know, just their theme and the way they approach it is handled in such a, it's a fantasy game, and it doesn't try to be anything but a fantasy game, and it has its own mythology tied to it, but it definitely has sort of like echoes in actual history, and it has sort of an alternate history where you can just, you can find a way, like this game on its easiest difficulty seems tough at first because you feel like, oh no, we're screwed. But then, once you get a few games in, players complain that the easy difficulty has no challenge. Well, you know what? You're playing a game on a difficulty level of 0. You can crank this thing up 13 more notches. This game goes to 13. And 13 is pretty darn high. You play with all these different adversaries that represent different places that would have colonized an island similar to the island in Spirit Island. But just when it comes down to it, there's like 8 different spirits in the base box, and each of them plays so different. Like you want to play this game 8 times before you even really, get a grasp on how to even start tackling the more difficult challenges you get from adversaries. And just that's where I'm at with this. It's just an absolutely beautiful game. I'm mainly putting this on here for the base game, and then if you want to play with like expansions or extra spirits, that's cool. But I really like the expansion specifically integrates this event deck that I'm not the hugest fan of. But the game itself, though, and the way that it integrates, that it kills the alpha gamer problem by just giving you so many decisions to do simultaneous from other players. That the game just kind of works, and you don't end up coaching other players because you just kind of do the best that you can. And occasionally you'd be like, come on, can't you help me out? But it's never like, no, dude, you need to do this. Well, most of the time it isn't, at least not in my experience. And yeah, that's my number 5, Spirit Island, a beautiful cooperative, a game that just, as I've said this before, just gives me the feels for its theme.
I've played this one 3 times now, and I've really enjoyed it. The thing I really enjoy about it is the freeform nature of it, where you can, everybody kind of takes their turn at the same time, but you can like figure out how you can execute your turn with another person for maximum effect. My only complaint is that it can be very procedural, and you have to follow each thing step by step, and it can be really overwhelming the first time you play it, just to see all that white stuff flood the board. It's like, holy crap. Oh, and what's this? What's this gray stuff? Oh, that's bad too. There is so many things that can just derail you on this thing, and it's really easy to miss a step. And I agree, it takes a few times just to wrap your head around it on the spirits that have low complexity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite co-ops, period. And I agree with almost everything you said about it. It works because there's so much going on just to figure out your own character and plot some sort of path going forward that you really can't. All you can really do to communicate with other people are like, so what threats can you handle? That's about the extent of communication. Yeah. You can't really alpha it.
Or you can offer assistance. You can be like, does anybody want their slow turns to be fast this turn? And like everybody goes, me. I'm like, no, I can only do 1. We got to figure this out.
Or you play the spirit where people are like, can you take care of what's on the board? Nope, I can't touch anything, but I'm racing the fear.
And it does. I mean, that really, the main thing that I've heard that has kind of tainted people's experience has been when they figure out that like a couple of the spirits in the game they had a hard time with seeing how they would work together to actually manage the board, and because I mean you do end up with almost different roles. Like, you almost get to that where you start identifying like somebody's like more of a move guys around. And it does, like, the game has all these different bars just to try to tell you, like, complexity and also stats. Like, what are these heroes' stats? So that way you can sort of make a group comp, your group composition when going into it. And I guess maybe keep that in mind because I have heard of people having a negative experience from that.
Oh, but I thought there was one game. Oh, I don't know if it was with you or somebody else, but I want to say there was one game where, like, me and somebody else both played
Fear, me and you did. We both played like the Fear spirits, and
like, so we were just racing the game because the game was destroyed.
It was like, are we gonna touch the board? No, I'm not going to. Are you going to? No. Okay. And but it somehow worked. It was like we get these fear cards and had to figure out how to like somehow manage all these like fear effects. It is and it felt so different. But I mean, at that easy difficulty, we still were able to manage it.
Oh yeah.
And then plus, if you know the people are playing, you can pretty much pick a spirit that's going to complement their play style. When I first learned it, I was throwing the lightning phoenix guy. I'm like, yeah, you're going to love this guy. You're just going to be throwing lightning and killing stuff all over the board. Like, yeah, this is cool.
Yeah, it does. I mean, what you do feels like, this is a zap, or this is like I'm flooding the coolest one, the one that I highly recommend, play one of the simple spirits first to get to know the game, and then play the Ocean's Hungry Grasp. Once you feel comfortable, play the Ocean's Hungry Grasp. By and large, just the most different of those races. Just so incredibly interesting. The way that it has these actions, these growth actions, and it's forced to sort of contract and come back to the ocean at times. It's phenomenal. So that's my number 5, Spirit Island.
Number 4.
My, how the mighty have fallen. I'm talking about Agricola, which might not sound like much of a drop. But Agricola being my number 4 means there's 3 games ahead of it. This was my number 1 at one time. So, what's up?
No, I was trying to guess your top 4, and then after I just figured out one of the top 4 I didn't get in there, and I should have.
Uh-oh. Well, Agricola, Trent put this on his top 10, and I really wanted to echo, say, listen to Trent's if you want to hear it stated well. I'll just do my best. It's the original worker placement that forces all players to kind of want to get to the same place, but it gives them these cards that give them all these different directions that they can take to get there. So kind of like what Andy said with, there being 10 different ways to approach a problem. In Agricola, you do all want to have a farm that, has certain features to it, right? You want to be present in all these different categories. And people criticize that the game just wants you to do all these things. It's not really giving you creativity. Well, I would contend that, it's not giving you creativity because it's a game and it has gameplay. Like, you're playing a competitive experience, like a way for your creativity to be expressed in a game system. I mean, there's still a character comes out when I play this with other players. Certain people are definitely going to be prioritizing different collection resource accumulation spots. I mean, the big thing about Agricola that it does, as a worker placement game or action drafting game, is that it has these spots that accrue resources that continue from one game to the next, or not from one game to the next, but from throughout its 14 rounds. Every round at the start of the round, you'll be replenishing lots of these areas. And so it's like, when is it so good that you have to take it? And this continually gets explored, especially in like Le Havre, other Uwe Rosenberg games, or at Labora would like be the ultimate, where it's just like every single round, it's like a tick up on every single resource. And it's like, when do you finally take it? Here in Agricola, things sort of move up at a predetermined rate. You're going to be wanting all these resources to do something. Everything seems to have its own use. But really, when this game comes down to it, the amount of effort that Uwe Rosenberg put into designing the base game of Agricola with 330 different cards of occupations, of minor improvements, it is a lifetime's worth of work and dedication and playability that has all just been baked into a solo, well, not a single purchase. And then you add expansions to that just continue to add new cards that do interesting things. And I'm not saying that expandability is what puts games on my list necessarily, because they have to have that solid core to work with. But that can certainly keep a game sort of continually just giving me more of that sort of more pieces to mix into the ultimate puzzle that will end up being solved is something that Agricola does super well. And then, of course, like it all connects to a theme that I feel, as descendants of northeastern Iowa farmers, I can definitely see how, this would be something that's interesting as there's just so many different aspects of subsistence farming in this German setting. So anyway, my number 4, previously my number 1 a couple of years ago, Agricola.
Yep. And nothing feels better in Agricola than watching the person who just built a buttload of fences glare at you as you take the 8 sheep that build up and turn them all into steaks.
But you were waiting for them to take that because you're going to let it go, because it's almost like, I feel like it's just a whole like Agricola turns into, because it really is like that sort of like turn by turn, I feel like it almost turns into just like this, somebody flips the doomsday switch that then really results in this player taking this action, and then that forces me to take this action, which then forces you to take this action. I feel like that's just the game. It's just like these constant doomsday switches that are being pressed, and it's all with this guise of these friendly, simple cartoon drawings of smiling people and weirdly creepy smiling animals, and it just works.
It's not a friendly game.
No. Tense gets my blood pumping, and that's the theme here between all of my games, and that's why Agricola is my number 4. So you need to play this one, TC. But I know, Trent, this is really high up on yours. Did I in any way miss anything?
Nope, you nailed it.
Number 4, Agricola.
Number 3.
Number 3 is another Vlada game, and one that has risen greatly, as Trent mentioned in his. In many ways, Trent and I, I think we share some. You and I maybe have the most interlocking here. I'm talking about Through the Ages, a new story of civilization, which really became the relevance that it needs to be here on this high on my list because of its app. When it comes down to it, my number 3, my top 3, I feel like I could have just shuffled them in about any order. I knew that I wanted these 3 to be my top 3. I knew for sure. And I didn't doubt much in terms of putting Agricola below that, but I did shuffle these around quite a bit. So I could have easily put Through the Ages, New Story of Civilization at my number 1. And that's just like, when it comes down to it, it's like, it's a Civ game. But to contrast with our Jeff Gamble's episode from last week, he put his number 1. His number 1 was a Civ game. But whereas his number 1 is like, it's led to these, all these different sort of moments that he remembers. I feel like in Through the Ages, every time I play the game, it's like I want a sort of balance to happen, but every single thing that happens that's either player driven or just by the way that the cards come out in the drafting line, it's like that balance is always going to be interrupted in some way, and no 2 games ever feel alike. But it is just so. It's a system where you are just, I feel like you're behind a locomotive pulling every single whistle. It's that sort of, it's you're doing everything you can to run this as best as you can, and everything that's going on is it's like it's out of control, but you're trying to keep it in control. And you've got war being integrated in this edition in a much more fair way, I feel, than it was in the original, where you had some kind of like some swings that that would result in there being like, I would almost say like a meta where you could really own players. But I'm sure high level play figured out how to fix that. But I know that they did some rebalancing to really make Through the Ages, New Story of Civilization just the type of game that I can recommend without reservation because it has an app. Now in person, this is much different. I hesitate to play it. It just takes a very long time. But yeah, Through the Ages is just absolutely beautiful. One of those few games where it's like, yeah, when I play it, I'm always playing with the same cards. And I know every card that's in the deck. I've seen it 100 times. Like, how does this game keep on entertaining me? You play it, you find out. I can't put that into words. I can just say, please try it for yourself, and go into it with the app, because it has an amazing app that finally adds that sort of Vlada character rulebook to the learning process for Through the Ages, which is present in Space Alert because it has this humorous rulebook, but not present in Mage Knight. It'd be great if they could do a Mage Knight app and then have that same sort of learning process.
Mage Knight is a game that would do well with an app too, just like Through the Ages, I have a feeling.
I hope so, man. Maybe we can always cross our fingers and hope. So that was my number 3, Through the Ages.
That was my number 2, by the way. So let's move on to number 2.
My number 2 is a game that almost defies comparison with other games on my list. It certainly entertains me, but it also is the first one that opened my mind up to the joys of playing a board game and building a party, and just the amount of depth of decision, the way that you tactically plan your positioning with other players, and the way that the enemies the way enemies react to you is really like your positioning is clutch and it's crucial, and it makes tactical puzzles out of every single scenario, which there's just 100 of them in the base game. I'm talking about that big old box, the biggest box I've ever owned, Gloomhaven. It's unfortunately, I have a campaign that I do not feel will ever be finished, but I hope to at some point resurrect and start playing my own copy, which has never been actually played yet, to actually get through this game, which, each time you play with a new character, and the way that this, if this game just had like 4 characters that you could play with and you just continue to play them, and then as soon as you got to sort of like a logical ending point, ended there, I feel like it still would be on everybody's list. But the fact that it comes with everything that you need, like literally people keep on saying D&D in a box when they talk about Descent, and I think that's much more accurate to be used as a descriptor for Gloomhaven. So that's why Gloomhaven is my number 2.
I will still say this about Gloomhaven. That is the most value in a box I've ever seen in my life. That is one big box of content. And we are about, God, I don't know, 1/25th through the campaign of that. And I really like that system. It's a really cool card system. I dig it a lot.
Gloomhaven, the only board game you can double as a murder weapon.
My campaign, we literally have the last scenario unlocked, and we're just winding up some side quests first.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. I felt like after playing it a lot, it started to get a little on the repetitive side. I'd say you will probably have enough to play through a campaign of it, and if you can get 40, 50 plays out of a game, I mean, what more can you say? I think at this point, I'm just feeling the repetition because I've played it 50 times.
Yeah.
Well, and you get to where it's like, I feel like there's so many different enemies and so much of the fun. Like it's strange when a game that does have solid game, I think it has solid gameplay, but I agree, Trent, that it could get repetitive. It's just strange when a game has this type of solid gameplay that we see as much different behaviors in enemies. Because I feel like that's really where I feel like the replayability really lies is, like just when you've got different enemies with their own decks that behave in a certain way and have different effects. I felt like that first time when I realized, like, I went through all the stacks of enemies and I'm like, we've seen pretty much all of these. That it was like, I felt almost like kind of sad. It was like, I wanted there to be more because like, that's, the puzzles that you come up with, like your party composition seems like it's always constantly morphing. So that's something that can keep you, even if you've been playing your character for a while, continually figuring out, ways to best work with other party members that may or may not be the same from your last session. But those enemies, I just feel kind of like, maybe adding new enemies and that type of stuff would keep being interesting. But, I don't know. Does it really, when it comes down to it, what would you say, Trent, if you were to go back and play it, but play it on like a higher difficulty? Would it be entertaining still?
I don't know. I think I could see it getting to where, it becomes like a puzzle almost to solve each one to do it the best way. That might be interesting. I don't know. It's really hard for me to judge. But I am planning on reviewing this in depth when I finish the campaign, which should be in about a month or 2.
Yeah, we're up there. So yeah, we can definitely look forward. Stay tuned for that upcoming episode of The Good Board Ugly when you see Trent reviewing it after finishing an entire campaign, which is something that I can't say. So yeah, I look forward to hearing from you, Trent. And that was my number 2. Oh, hold on. Before we go to number 1, does anybody want to make predictions?
This is hard because I thought
it was going to be Gloomhaven.
Yeah.
I thought it was Gloomhaven.
Oh.
Shatters. This is your moment.
Splendor.
Cards Against Humanity.
Tansa Teutonica.
Ooh,
that's actually a decent guess. That's not too bad.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that game.
Marco Polo.
Grace and Bob was suggested in our comments, and so yeah, I'm gonna have to disappoint everybody, but I did see Andy posted as a suggestion earlier. Gaia Project. Now,
yeah, okay.
I feel confident putting my number 1 as a game that just came out simply because it like Terra Mystica would have made my list had Gaia Project not come out. Gaia Project has just it's taken the same formula that worked from Terra Mystica, but the amount of new combinations and strategies that are possible and will change from game to game, which is not really that common in Terra Mystica. Like, you'll have a strategy for a certain race, but you don't really see – you kind of see, like, certain – I don't want to say – like, I guess certain ways to play, because really, like, the big variables in this game, aside from the timing of when you build certain things, which just, you know, kind of, like, determines the pacing of the game, here we're seeing – more like these new tiles that add these really impactful abilities that are now tied to a wonderful new tech track where everybody is together and is being rewarded in a way that feels much more like you feel like there's less BS points, less points that, like, you know, somebody moves up once and gets 8 points in a track or something. It really validated what was something I didn't see as being that weak, but saw as more necessary. In Terra Mystica, there's a track called the Cult Track, which is probably the most controversial part of the game because it is fairly simple, and it's kind of it feels kind of out of context. It's just like a bunch of tracks to compete to whoever gets the highest gets points, and then there's certain different other things you can get for your presence on the tracks, but it's not really well rewarded by other game systems necessarily. You could easily ignore them and just wait until the last end of the game, and then everybody just starts to start fighting because they just want to get the most points, and it kind of almost ends up where you just end up wasting resources. But they're necessary waste of resources because if you don't compete with other players, they'll just get free points and easy points, and it won't be worth it. So it's sort of like exists because it had to exist, and then it had to exist because Terra Mystica needed some other aspect. But you really see that the full realization of a competitive track where players are jockeying for, you know, to be the highest and to get the most points, because you've got different abilities that are tied to every single thing on the track. That can be tied to income. It could be tied to how far you can ship, because now in Gaia Project, you're essentially playing Terra Mystica out in space, and every planet, for the most part, it's rare when a planet is next to another planet at all. And a lot of times those planets that are right next to each other and adjacent are not the same. Like, they're so far away and so difficult to terraform that they're not ones that would even be considered as a race's as one of the fantasy races that you play as their logical progression. So it just, to me, it validated a lot of the weak points, and it did so also by adding just this, you know, this extra little touch with the tiles that you can get for favor tiles now, and that just the favor tile system, the systems interlock better than they used to. Terra Mystica would have made my top 5. Gaia Project is my number 1 because I think of it as just being that much better than Terra Mystica. I know that I've played this game much less than Terra Mystica, but it certainly is, like, it is one that somehow replaces a game that was in my top 5. I couldn't imagine that. Its existence is totally valid, and it replaces it. That's why it belongs here. My number 1. I guess I don't think I said, you know, to people who've never heard of it before, Gaia Project, Terra Mystica, it's kind of like, it's originally designed by, like, train gamers, but it sort of Terra Mystica took fantasy races, and you'd just be kind of like, imagine Catan without randomness, where you just get income based on what you've built, and then add that together with different fantasy races competing to terraform, and it just, you know, certain races will be in more competition with others, you want to be next to each other, but you don't want to be next to each other. That's sort of like all these different really interesting interlocking systems. The way that the new Gaia forming works feels different, feels unique. In Gaia Project, you know, I feel like I'm kind of scatterbrained about it because it just, you know, this game is so much to take in to me that it is just, it's beautiful. It's a masterpiece. And, you know, it somehow delivered on all the counts that I was gauging. And he's met with silence.
Oh, I have not played this. I've played Terra Mystica a few times. I'm surprised at this one. I've heard a lot of mixed things about Gaia Project compared to Terra Mystica. Although I will say the prospect of playing Terra Mystica in space does hold a lot of appeal for me personally. But
I just played it once, so I don't know how to classify it yet. As far as, like, is it better than Terra or not? Some of the base ideas and systems I think are, but I'm not sure which one I prefer yet. But yeah, I need to play it more.
Yeah, I feel for you, Joe, because the minute I put Rex above Dune, I got a lot of flack for that. Welcome to the club, Joe.
I'm still waiting on you, Trent. Any 2 cents here?
No, I mean it's. I consider Gaia Project to be an improvement in Terra Mystica. I quite like Terra Mystica. I think I like Gaia Project even more. It makes sense that it's on your list. It makes sense that it's very high on your list. It was probably in my top 50. I'd have to think about that, but it's in that area. One I would never, ever, 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 ever turn down.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, well, and there's the end of my list. So yeah, my number one is a game that was just released, and I feel super mainstream. Like I'm just a loser, man. Two of my top three
Like,
are number 1 and number 3 on Board Game Geek. So it's a lot
of them are newer releases too. I was quite surprised by that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. And here would be what I'd say about that. You know, there are those that would contend that, you know, I haven't played these games enough. I don't know what I'm talking about. The thing is, like, you know, you got a point, I guess, that I haven't been playing them for year after year after year, and maybe like a game falling out of my, you know, field of vision is more due to the fact that it's just I'm playing what's coming out and what's new and what's Chrome, you know. Sure. But I would contend that I see, like, for example, in the example of my top, for number 1, it's a progression, right? Like, there are some ways in which board games have stepped forward over the years, right? When you look at a game that came out in the 90s, when you think that game is great, like, for example, Modern Art, which got suggested as what might be my top game. I mean, that game is just so beautiful. When you compare it to anything else from 92, it's like, it's amazing how relevant it feels. But when you go to other games from 1992, you can really see, like, you know, there was, especially games that were trying things. You know, we got these games that are coming out all the time that are trying new things, and we might see them even today as being successful because it pioneers something new. But like when you go back and try it again, it's like, oh, this was not. No, I think a lot of the games on my list may or may not be super innovative, but I certainly feel that they are extremely refined and ones that are very much like, it's like you take all these different aspects and elements that specifically make the playtesting process extremely difficult, and then you make them somehow like function at their highest potential. And I feel like that's a common theme around all these different games. So I guess my counter to the, like, these are all new games, or what do you like all these new games? Well, you know, I love games that have been around for a long time too. I mean, like, you know, the long view is really near and dear to my heart. But like, I think that there's a certain amount of progress that happens. So it would make sense that, you know, that my top games would also reflect the progress that's happened, especially since I think that board games are headed a lot in a direction that I am very positive and looking forward to see. So maybe that answers a question from one of our comments we got in our Board Game Geek Guild that was like, is Joe joining the dark side? And I think that maybe this means that I'm not. Maybe this means that you know, I'm one of the few people that's not going to you know, just, you know, that I'm happy with a lot of the things that are coming out, that are not just coming out from smaller publishers, but are coming out from bigger publishers too. So and I think that every game deserves a chance. That, you know, a lot of games don't get the chance they deserve because they're not coming out from a bigger publisher, but that doesn't mean that the bigger publishers' games aren't also worth your time. So that's I guess, you know, my defense of that perspective. But I also appreciate, TC, that you weren't like attacking me. You were just like saying, like,
well, it was just interesting because when I did my top 10, I struggled with the Arkham Horror card game because I was looking at the stats and how much I play. I'm like, oh my god, this has just blown the board game to pieces at this point. We're playing it more, we're enjoying it more. Maybe it's time for it to be replaced with this, and I struggled a while with that. So I mean, it's just an interesting, different perspective. I mean, that was my new one, and I struggled quite a bit if it deserved to be on my top 10 or not. And at the end of the day, it did, just because we played it so freaking much, and I see it. We're gonna keep playing it.
Yeah, I totally get it, dude. Yeah, when you said that, I was like, no, this makes perfect sense. And it was also like it fulfilled a slot for something that was super near and dear to your heart, but it did so in like a progressive way. Like it just sort of like reflected that progress that we've made. You know, that this is delivering something that you really enjoy, but it's doing so in a way that you are, you know, you appreciate even more than what brought you out in the first place.
Yeah.
So, and I guess maybe I should have been talking from the first person there, because that's certainly what Terra Mystica and Gaia Project, what happened with those. Anyway, that's my top 10. Now we're going to roll on into our hype section, kicking it off here with a quick go at it. You know, let's go ahead and hear about a game that's going to be, is it currently on Kickstarter or coming out really soon, from Andy's favorite game company, if you did it by his top 10.
Yeah, so I'm gonna hype the Estates. This is basically gonna be Neue Heime 2.0. If you've never heard of that game, it was a fairly unknown game at the time, done by Chile Spiel, I think it was the name of the original company. Basically, like, this is a game that's just it's the next one in the Simply Complex line. So they did the Climbers, and now this one. It's another game that kind of looks all cute and nice, and there's little pretty colored blocks and nice little player colors, and it's like mean, just tremendously mean of an auction. It's by far, from what I've heard and heard from people who played it, the most brutal auction game in existence. There's something to be said in this game that a strategy is to get 0 points and drive everybody else into negatives. Because you can just do weird things. Like, everything's auction. There's these little, house cubes you stack. You have to get a roof on them. But you can do things like there's special powers like, this comes up for auctions. Wherever I choose to place it, that row is going to score negative points instead of positive points. Can you afford to let me have this now? But it's a closed economy. So the way I've heard a lot of people play it is they'll play 3 rounds of it, and money you carry over from the first round as your starting money for the second round, and so on. They're not really changing that much about the game, other than there was kind of a weird, like, sort of lose your turn rule that just felt really sort of dated for the kind of game this is. And Clay, as he was talking to the designer was basically like, I don't know what I was thinking. That was a stupid idea, so take it. So they removed that. It's going to be up on Kickstarter, I believe, April 11th. I will be backing it. And if it sounds good to you, go ahead and do that too. I know, like, people have been giving him some crap because Clay's never been a big fan of Kickstarter. But because this game has so much big, chunky wood blocks in it, it would be a really big risk to him financially if he were to make this game and it were to tank for some reason. He could lose his company on it because that much wood in the production is going to cost. It's going to be tough. And so Kickstarter makes sense for him. They are talking about maybe some exclusive stretch goals of some kind. They're coming from the designer, and from what I've heard, they're not really things that are going to affect gameplay for the most part, because that's always the scare in these Kickstarter stretch goals is it going to affect gameplay? Because when you got a game that's so sort of delicately, you don't want some weird promo tile or something that's just broken being used.
Yeah.
This is something I wrote to him about that I thought he should do, and I actually sent this as a suggestion, I think.
Yeah.
I think I sent it. Was that his Kickstarter should be for a uniquely colored version of it that you aren't going to be able to get. Your Kickstarter exclusives is that the Kickstarter version is colored way different.
Yeah.
Just something that people can, like, notice, but doesn't actually, like, necessarily add to gameplay, because that really turns Andy off, right? Because if it has Kickstarter exclusive components, then Andy would be being a huge hypocrite, which I would never expect Andy to do if Andy backed it.
Oh, no, it's not a hypocrite, because I fully admit, I don't know. I admit that if it has exclusives, I don't care and I'll take them. But if it's after the fact and I want it and it has exclusives, I'll be like, nope, not buying it. I fully
like Andy. I've heard you say that you didn't want to back a game because it had exclusives in the past.
Oh yeah, but that was CMON. There were other reasons.
Speaking of, has the factory food, the tokens for Arkwright come out yet?
Yep.
Oh yeah, I just got mine a couple days ago.
Me too.
I got to put my order in then. Thanks for keeping me up to date on that. Speaking of Capstone. Okay, sweet. I'm ordering it now.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, all right. That's Andy's hyping the Estates, which is coming from Capstone. Will be on Kickstarter soon. I look forward to it. I think what I love about what Clay does is how he doesn't just say, I'm going to remake this and make it look nicer. He's like, no, we're going to go back to the drawing board and make this game even better, which is just beautiful. He did that with the Ruhr and the Ohio. He's done it with other games in the past. I really do appreciate that.
The changes to Wildcatters were really positive as well.
Yeah. And I know the big thing, I think one of the end stretch goals is to put different silk screen printing on the dice around the solid faces of it that aren't used for pip scoring, because that would make it very colorblind friendly, which the original Noyo Jaime was not.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, he's even thinking along those lines, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, very cool. All right, well, Trent and TC, I think you've got listed as two separate hypes, but I think they might be actually one and the same. You're both going to be talking about your addiction, your living card game addiction. And I'm interested because I hadn't heard about it in a few months, but what's been going on with L5R, Legend of the Five Rings?
There's literally been no releases since November, so it's been hard to hype anything.
Yeah, We're still playing it.
Yep,
but what are they doing now?
Well, tomorrow a clan pack comes out. A clan pack is like, in the terms of Game of Thrones, is somewhere between a chapter pack and a full big boxes being just somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
So it's a fairly decent dump of cards, and that literally hits stores tomorrow. And then after that, they just announced the second cycle of packs, but they're releasing those as well as just as they did the first cycle. They're releasing them in 6 weeks, one a week.
Yeah, it's going to be Wall of Apocalypse all over again. That was my hype.
What do you guys think about that? How did that work for them the first time?
It was kind of nice jumping quickly to a larger card pool. I'm not sure if it really is needed now. I actually think it would be more fun to dole them out slowly, but that's my opinion. But whatevs. I felt it was more fun. Like each month a new pack would come out, and you'd tinker with it, and then you'd wait a week or a few weeks, and then another pack would come out. I wonder. This is missing that. Now it's cool to have a huge number of cards dumped into the card pool very quickly. That's fun, but then it fades, and then there's a long period with nothing.
Yeah, that seems just strange. It's like I wonder if they aren't experimenting with this. If maybe what they were kind of. Maybe I don't know if there was a disappointment with like wanting there to be more, more rallied tournament play. I don't know. I just like, I don't know. This doesn't, it seems like, they're still releasing monthly packs of all their other LCGs.
Yeah. Arkham's still coming out monthly, but they decided just to dump all this. And yeah, I have mixed feelings on it. I mean, I'll get them, of course. But, oh, my goodness, it means I got to get another binder at once, a whole page of sheets, and then we got to wait for all of them to come out. And, yeah, it's a lot. It is literally a lot to take in at once. And I've really figured they would do a clan pack for each clan before they did a different cycle, but I guess not. So we'll see where this goes. I'm entering my first official tournament Saturday at GameStorm. We'll see how that goes.
Good luck, dude.
Yeah, I know I'll get trounced, but I really enjoy watching other people play and seeing what other combos people are coming up with, and it's all fun. And I take it with a grain of salt, with relax. I am nowhere near as highly competitive as some of these other guys are, but man, there's really something else watching too. I really like watching highly skilled competitive people play each other. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of these high level matches go down, and I'll keep you posted. I'm curious if Unicorn's still as weak as everyone says it is, but we'll see.
I don't think it is, but we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I've gotten hosed by Unicorn. Our store is probably going to be a Unicorn stronghold when we do our little tournament there.
Yeah.
The only thing I want to mention is there's also a large tournament around here in Des Moines next Sunday, and I'm looking forward to it.
We'll do a session report. I'll let you know what clan did well here, and you can tell us what clan did well there, Trent.
Okay, we'll do.
Okay.
Looking forward to it, guys. Very cool. All right, that was L5R from our two resident LCG players, LCG addicts, I would say.
Oh yeah, we got 2 LCGs. It is not a cheap thing to keep up with at this point.
Oh boy, so that was I guess that would lead me to the last hype here, which is going to be a gigantic toy. I think Andy put it on here sarcastically that I would be hyping Fireball Island, but you know what, Andy? It's coming, man. I had to look up the Kickstarter in response to Andy's deciding that I was going to hype it. But you know what? I played another game by Restoration Games. I think their first game was Stop Thief, and that one, is using an app. And this, it uses an app in the same way that you would have this sort of like talk box, that was all the rage in like the 80s. Here, instead of any of that, it's all like physical. This is essentially like Fireball Island is kind of like a gamer's version of Mousetrap, so to say. But it's less about the assembly and more about just what direction this ball rolls down, like a sort of 3D, three-dimensional board, which is really like what it does is it necessitates like the most obscenely huge box that's ever like happened in any board game or anything. And what's cool is you look at this Fireball Island Kickstarter, they've got like several different expansions that were never a part of the game. And what I do have faith in is that these guys love nostalgia. And if you love Fireball Island, you're gonna definitely love this game. Now, I'm not in that category. I played Fireball Island like once with a copy that was like at a board game cafe. I think the one over in Omaha at Spielbound, the board game cafe in Omaha. And it was like one of those where I was like, I played it to say I played it, and I was like, it looks cool, but really, like it's like
it's a rolling move.
Yeah, it's a rolling move. I mean, it's like nothing special to it. Restoration did better than that with Stop Thief, which originally had a roll and move mechanic to it. So I would expect the same out of them with Fireball Island. It looks like the content they're looking to add is going to make it so that there is like that toy factor here, but there's going to be a solid what they did in Stop Thief was they had every player has like a variable deck that depends on what player you play as, and I can see that happening here. Just all kinds of stuff with the extra expansions getting added. It's really tempting, and it sounds like TC's behind it. I'm not really sure though.
I just got the base game, but I did look on Kickstarter, and for 130 you can get like 4 expansions. I will be upgrading my pledge. I will be getting the 130 because I can almost guarantee you my kids are going to love this game. It's going to be an insane amount of fun.
All right, well, that brings us to the end of this episode of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. Hopefully one that you enjoyed more than you knew was possible, more than, hopefully I exceeded your expectations, which I told you going into this not to have any. So it's your fault. Actually, shame on you for having any to start with.
Man, I should have went to Game Storm. Damn it.
Thank you so much, TC. That's the best compliment you could have given me. And you too, Andy, Trent. It was great having you guys on there. Thanks for bouncing back some of these bad ideas with me.
No problem.
Better than I thought. I only lost 1,000 brain cells.
All right, well, that was this week's episode of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. Thanks to everybody who participated in the community, in the chat. We had all kinds of Carmen was here moderating. Obviously, he didn't. He just wanted to make sure that I think he wanted to minimize damages to his brand. We also had Norm, who was here throughout the entire thing, and it was just great hearing from you, Norm. Thank you so much for your participation as well. Paul, Carter, all of you, Dean earlier, thanks for being here. It means the world to me, and I hope that you enjoy your week of gaming and catch us next week on The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly.